everybody. Frank Wassenberg here on another episode of Cloudlinx, the CX Experience podcast. Very excited for today. Welcome, everybody.
I am Frank's business partner, Kevin Sheehan. I too welcome you to the CX Experience.
We both welcome you to the CX Experience.
You're
today.
welcomed to this experience.
Well, thank you for welcoming me,
Amanda. We are very excited to have you on the show today. I got to tell you, I tried to get you on in season 1, but you were just too busy.
Yeah.
Your schedule was too tight, and it's tough when we got to go through booking agents to get people because we don't try that hard for that. So I'm very excited to have Amanda Russo, everybody, on the call today. She is the founder and CEO of Cornerstone Paradigm Consulting, a business partner of ours, who fits a very particular side to us, where when we go in and do the contact center consulting, she comes in and helps clients arrange the business operations to adopt the new technology, to adopt any new technology, really. We bring her in for the contact center portion, obviously, but Amanda's focus is business operations, everything for the end-to-end operational life cycle of a business. Very excited to have you on today, Amanda. So welcome aboard. That's our 12th welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So I always find every client that we go see and we go work with when we do a new contact center solution, they look at this technology and they kind of go, wow, look at all this, look at everything this can do. Yeah. And then they sit there and they say, I don't know what to do with it.
Right.
Or I'm going to do everything at once with it.
Right.
And then they look up and they go, I'm asking the wrong questions now because my reports are all crazy. So how do you fit into that kind of, at that moment of change, where do you fit into to really make it the best impact?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Frank. So I would say, for us, we do cover a very specific part of the business, which is everything but the widget, right? So we cover end-to-end business operations that covers people, processes, technology, and the customer experience. That entire life cycle is under one function, and we did that deliberately because anytime a company is looking to adopt a new piece of technology, improve their call center turnaround times or their contact center information and data, there's a lot of other moving parts that are encompassed into that project, right? And so it's, you're buying a new piece of technology and there is a purpose to it, but you have to fix every other part of your business in order for that particular initiative to be successful. So we go in and we will assess the business as one holistic entity, find out what some of the other issues are that are, frankly, a lot of them are symptoms to the core issues, and we'll correct all of those issues so that your part of the project, the call center piece of it, is as successful as it should be.
And
I hope that makes sense.
It does. And I don't want to pigeonhole you into, working with us on the contact center piece. You're obviously, your breadth of services goes well beyond this. I know you're dealing with a client right now where you've outfitted and built basically from the ground up an entire warehousing infrastructure for an online store. So your breadth of services goes well beyond that. That's why I think the way you described it as business operations management is kind of key, not just contact center services.
Right.
It's a good pitch.
That's the first thing people always ask us, Amanda, and I've noticed just by going through the roster of client projects that you've done, you really have an extremely disparate list of verticals. You've done government operations, you've done healthcare, you've done e-commerce, you've done,
food and beverage, heavy machinery. It runs the gamut. Yeah.
Right. Do you find that there is niche applications for a vertical, or is there a universal? I know you use the acronym SIP, which is very different than how we use it. Is there a universal SIP plan for all different types of companies, big and small?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So there is a little bit of a misconception that, specific softwares are for specific industries or technology solutions are for specific industries. I would highly encourage any company, even if you're looking to purchase a new piece of software or a new, technology to solve whatever said problem is, to try to move away from the model of, well, this is the industry normal or this is the industry standard, because there is really no such thing as an industry standard. And I say that to say that even if you are a mirror image of a competitor of yours, you are still not the same company. Your needs are different, your requirements are different, and collecting your business requirements is the exercise that will help you solve that particular question.
I'm smiling because one of the things that Frank and I always joke about is that when we're pitching a company for our services, which are based around call center services and putting that infrastructure into a cloud,
Yeah.
they always want client references from the exact same vertical that they are. So a law firm will say, do you have any other law firms that you've done this for? Or, and it's like the cloud is going to be the same whether you're a law firm or whether you're a dentist or whether you're, the cloud is the same. The functions are the same. The phone numbers work the same way. So it always kind of like, clients think that's a smart question to ask, but it actually isn't. It's a big tell sign that they don't know what they're doing.
Right. And that's sort of where we both, kind of come into the picture and really add a lot of value, because, even if I did have, in your example for the law firm, even if we did work with another law firm or we did work with another construction company or heavy machinery or whatever it is, it doesn't totally matter, because you're not the same company. You're never going to be the same company. Even if you believe that you're a mirror image of your competitor, a mirror image, you do the same things, you serve the same people, so on and so forth, you're still not the same company.
Right.
Your business requirements are always going to be different.
And we use an example kind of on that same vein, where we worked with a particular client that was a union. And when we worked with them, they were making 2 generational leaps in technology to go to a cloud-based contact center. And some of the processes, some of the procedures, some of the things that we changed, we took from a retail organization, we took from a medical organization, we took from a manufacturing and a distribution organization, because there's just different ways of doing things that I think fit right into the way of that you're talking about. It's there's no pigeonholed process that always works for every business, because your people are different. And that's, not even getting into the people conversation, because one of the things that I imagine is somewhat hard for you to do at times is to go and tell people that, maybe some of your people just aren't right for the roles that they're in, because you're seeing it.
Yeah, that's also another great question. So we come across that from time to time. And, I think for us, our discovery process sort of backs up a lot of the conversation that we have later on down the line when we're talking about solutions and how we're going to, approach tackling, the issue or issues, I should say. And sometimes the people question does come up. I think for us and my business model, we're big advocates of, let's upskill or retrain people, as opposed to, trying to hire younger, smarter, cheaper. And or we'll find something else for those folks to do if we're automating their entire job. Right. And so it can be a little bit of a difficult conversation, but we try to go into these kinds of conversations with the solution in mind. And that is, let's find another role that's maybe more suitable for that particular employee and income generating for the company. So.
Yeah, I think that's a big fear. Listen, one of the big fears of change is, am I going to miss out? Am I going to get, am I going to get outsourced? Is my job going to move on? I think even with the contact center automation software, you see that, pretty heavily, where people need to be concerned around the technology, but they don't need to be concerned about their job. It's more about just learning the new process, learning the procedures, because everybody wants to succeed. And I think every business owner, especially in the areas that you and I and Kevin are working in, they want all their staff to do well. They're not looking to lay off 50,000 people. They're looking to build the organization with the people they have and have everyone do better. Now, you mentioned something around a software earlier, which, I should have used as a lead in to ask this question, but I didn't. So I'm going to come back to it. You just published an ebook, and I got to give you credit. you are one of the most prolific ebook writers I've ever seen, and I'm waiting for the Amanda Russo compilation to come out, because you publish a lot of ebooks, and I find them very interesting. Which is, not how we met, and I'll get into how we met in a little bit. But the book was called "Avoid Choosing the Wrong Software Solution," which
Yes.
I think when you look at the people that are making those decisions, similar to how when we look at contact centers, it's often the most expensive and the most high profile purchase
Yeah.
the person making that decision is going to make.
Right.
And it's scary. So, talk a little bit about what you kind of highlight in the ebook.
Yeah, so we kind of go through that entire process, talking about how a decision maker goes about making that kind of a purchase. In some cases, it will be the biggest purchase they ever make in their lifetime, not even in their career. Some of these pieces of technology are millions of dollars. It just depends on the kind of company that, and what they're looking to do. But these pieces of technology are incredibly expensive, and again, kind of back to the point that we spoke about a little bit earlier, where it's no longer okay to just pick something because you believe it's the industry norm, or it's the industry, the piece of technology, let's say, or the machinery that's being used widely throughout your industry. You don't actually know that. And so, making that kind of decision, there is a process to go about making that kind of decision, to make sure that it is appropriate for your company, to make sure that it's appropriate to resolve your issue. And, last but not least, will it scale with you? What are you looking to do? Are you looking to scale this business? Are you looking to refine? Maybe, maybe you're looking to not scale the business, but offer more products or services to your current clientele. It just depends on what it is that you're looking to do. So there is no standard, software for any said industry. And there's, also certainly not, it's not advisable to just pick, what you believe is the standard. You have to go through the process.
I agree on that front. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah. My question, Amanda, is when you first kind of engage with a client, what do you find is their greatest apprehension about a large software purchase?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say, when clients are working with us, we are so immersed into their company and their processes and people. The team has already met us several times, and we go through this exercise we call discovery. So by the time that we draw these process maps, really on a quite granular level, everybody from top down, bottom up is fully aware of certainly why we're there, the information and data that we're pulling, and really what the core issues are, what the root cause of those issues are, the symptoms, frankly, what you're feeling on the receiving end. The symptoms that you're feeling, we uncover what the root cause of those symptoms are. So by the time that we get to a software solution selection, we narrow it down to, let's say, the top 5 or the top 10. Sometimes it's driven by price, but again, we bring the client back into the conversation with business requirements, the issues at hand that we're looking to resolve, and what solution is the best to scale or to sort of fulfill the rest of their strategic goals. So,
and I feel like when you do that, I feel like there's probably a huge acknowledgement on everyone's part about what the symptoms are.
Yeah.
And then I feel like your biggest hurdle is finding out what the causes are, because no one's going to agree what the causes are of those problems.
Well, it is very interesting. It's a very eye-opening exercise. Certainly when we're going through the discovery process, it is viewed as sort of a simple task, and we'll just draw this, and we can just do this, and it's sort of minimized. But when we get to the part of the conversation where we actually show them the maps, and we
I love that. That's the big reveal. That's the big reveal.
It's very eye-opening. It's usually a very quiet meeting at first, and we kind of go over step by step with time stamping, with each and every single step, every single process, who this process touches, all the hands that have to be exchanged in order to get said project or said thing from point A to point B, it becomes very eye-opening. So I think for us, that certainly helps us in the rest of the discussions going forward.
Amanda, could I ask, I hope I can ask, one of the things that you do as part of your process, which is very, very tailored for each company, is to do a readiness assessment around are they capable of taking on this change with the current infrastructure or people structure that they have. Have you ever gone back to a client and said, no, you're just not ready, this is going to be negatively business impacting if you take this on?
Yes, we have. And I say that definitively yes, because remember, again, we're going through the exercise of discovery. And so if a client wants, so we go through the exercise of discovery, we come up with a priorities list, and the client is so enthusiastic that they want to tackle the entire list. And we will, kind of slow them down and say, look, actually too much change at one time is not really good for any kind of organization. And two, you're not really ready for it. So every single time that we go through a change, right, we implement a new piece of technology, whether that be for the call center or the main office, or whatever it might be, we implement it and then we have to refine it to make sure that it's tailored to be a great solution for the people, the end user, right? And so sometimes that's not always going to be a one and done. You have to tailor, that solution to make sure that it is setting the folks up, the user up to be as successful as possible.
And I think that's key there is you don't push any particular software. You don't care. You don't make any compensation from the softwares. You don't care. You just, if this software makes sense for you, that's what we're going to go with, because we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into what everyone thinks you should be using.
Right. Yeah. And I think, sorry.
No, I was to kind of dovetail Frank's point. One of the biggest values that your organization delivers to a client, which is something that we often say ourselves, is that no vendor is going to come in and tell you you're not ready to buy this.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
And that's a really big insurance policy to have when you go into that kind of a career defining purchase.
Yeah. And they're also never going to tell you, oh, actually, this is not going to solve all your issues, because frankly, they don't even know what your issues are, because you don't even know what your issues are.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the kind of thing where we always have to remember, and look, I have a lot of respect for technology companies and technology solutions, because I'm in that business, but they are never going to tell you this is going to solve all your problems. This is going to be, just because you buy, something shiny and new and really expensive doesn't mean that you're going to be problem free, because you didn't address those issues before purchasing that software. So technology companies, frankly, are in the business of selling that technology, and I have a lot of respect for them and a lot of respect for that. But I'm in the business of making sure that you make the right decisions. And that's not always going to be the cheapest solution. That's not always going to be the most common solution, but we're going to make sure that whatever we pick is appropriate for your specific business, for your specific needs, and will scale with you.
Yeah. Like I was just going to say, like, making it a sort of more pragmatic way to understand. Like I mentioned, I made a car reference earlier. I'm a huge aficionado of sports cars. And like, could you imagine if you simply were able to hire a consultant for a nominal amount of money before you made a purchase of a very expensive automobile, who would come in and say, love it, but 19 months from now, your alternator is going to go, and I can statistically show you that that's a fact.
Yeah.
And have that. And yet, like, there's that service doesn't exist.
But yes, like, a side business one from Kevin I got to start looking out for.
But like, people make purchases in their careers to an exponent of 100 times that, hoping that the sales rep seems like a nice person. I hope it all works out.
Yeah. Or, they're wowed by the bells and whistles, or they're wowed by, let's say the office or the campus. Some of these companies have campuses.
Yeah, the sizzle of it.
you can get, I mean, and that's the whole point of it, isn't it? Right? Like, it's to be wowed by how fantastic we look. But and again, like, I think it is, I think it is great. You know, you do look fantastic, but we're not really going for the way that their office space looks. I'm looking at business requirements, business needs, end user needs, future scalability, all the other, you know, things that I think folks can sometimes lose sight of, especially when you're, you know, in the moment, right? You're being so wowed by you know, your
Yeah.
surroundings.
No, it is. We did a top 10 list a couple months ago, and it was around how to do an effective demonstration. And I think this ties into it really well, because one of the things that we found, and I would bet you would agree, and if you're not, feel free to tell me, is
Sure.
that kind of dazzling of the boss's eyes
Yeah.
happens when everyone's goals aren't aligned.
Right.
Everyone in the organization doesn't seem to be wanting the same thing, doesn't understand where they're going, and isn't tied to kind of like a mission statement for what we're trying to do here. So when they get on a demo, there may be one very obscure feature that gets somebody's attention. And there may be some one little thing that the boss goes, or a contact center manager goes and says, I loved that package. And you're like, well, yeah, but that's one thing of 70. We have
Right.
20 use cases here. So we put a lot of effort into formalizing a demonstration so
Yeah.
that you're not just hoping for the best on the call and relying on really good salesmanship.
Yeah. Like I said, I think for us and our approach, the discovery process
Yeah, it's key.
kind of clears the air, right? Like, I love all the bells and whistles too, but that's not what we don't need, all the bells and whistles. I say this, and Kevin might appreciate my analogy here, but we at my company, we don't allow the client to buy the Ferrari, or maybe it's not because it's not German, I don't know. But we don't allow the client to buy the Ferrari version of a piece of software, right? We help them make the decision, the appropriate decision for their business. Sorry, Kevin, I know I couldn't pick a
No,
German.
no, no. I mean,
But
if your point is that you don't allow your client to purchase something that is extremely overpriced and riddled with maintenance issues, I would say that's the best analogy you can make, because that is every Ferrari owner's experience.
yeah,
And
so
it's a car that I can't fit in, so it's good. I like that.
exactly. Well, we want to make sure that that whatever we pick, it makes sense for the company. Yeah. So essentially, yes. And we do help them make those decisions with the facts, the data from their own organization. It's not from my brain. It's not from, you know, past, you know, implementations, because again, no two companies are the same.
Sure.
And so we help them, you know, make those rational decisions.
You know, kind of keeping in this, but perhaps a little bit more of a serious tone. Another thing that I've noticed, and I think, again, with your consulting on a business operations level, it's not in one particular swim lane, it's business operations end to end. You have a large organization that's looking at a major purchase, not just the out-of-pocket expense, but also this software is going to fundamentally change their customers' experience.
Yes.
Typically, C-level people are not involved in the day-to-day review of this process, so they're charging, you know, people at the director level or whomever in procurement or technology to handle the real, make the decision.
Right.
Going back to the Ferrari reference, and we've seen this, you don't know if that director is, well, he's being flown to Italy and he's being shown, you know, a good time at the track and expensive dinners, and he's falling in, or she is falling in love with being wined and dined.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily translate to making the best call for the operation. Having an agnostic third party there to validate if you're a C-level person, because ultimately they're the ones who are going to be charged with having made that decision, and you're just hoping that the as Frank said, the sizzle isn't too much of a factor.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and again, like, I think the fact that we are impartial, you know, there is no whining and dining. I don't get kickbacks. We don't get involved in that kind of business. You know, for us, again, like, and even at the director level, then the question then becomes like, how much are they actually in the day to day? You know, can I really sit that director in a I'll use the call center reference again. Can I really sit them in a call center's seat and tell them, show me what the day is like? So unless that person can do this, literally take calls all day, document the information, use the software that they're currently using, show me exactly what happens when something goes wrong, so on and so forth. Unless that person can do this, can go through that exercise and quite literally work the function of, the end user, their opinion matters, right? They're, of course, they're involved with the decision making, but it is important for us from a top down, bottom up perspective to make sure that we are answering the end user's needs. So, because that ultimately that is going to affect the customer experience. The CEO, frankly, isn't in the day-to-day business, even maybe at the director level, isn't in the day-to-day business. We're trying to answer questions at a user level. So let's involve the user.
Yeah, and I think that's where, I've done a couple software implementations in my life or in my past life for CRMs, right? And
yeah,
I was probably more of a sales guy than I wanted to admit to at the time, so I didn't like CRMs as much. But we put it in place to answer the boss's reporting requirements.
right.
And it candidly, it failed. It failed well, and then it failed miserably, I should say. It failed pretty spectacularly. But when you look at the contact center thing, we look at that software as how to turn that agent into an enabler. That's a big thing for us. We don't talk agents, we talk enablers, because they're the ones carrying on the mission statement of the company. If you're not thinking about it in their day-to-day life, it's really not making anybody any better. So if you put it in with 75 buttons that they got to push on day one, they go from nothing to 75 buttons.
Right.
And you're shocked that it failed. It's almost irresponsible.
Right.
You've got to build it a little more responsibly so that those people are considered.
Right. I mean, and again, like, I think we lose a lot of sight. I think at the director level or the senior managing director level, making good decisions, oftentimes they are expensive. It's not really all easy said and done, and not engaging the end user wholeheartedly, right? Because remember, the other part of the specialty of working with someone like me is, we go through a discovery process. We remain, everybody who is involved in the discovery process remains anonymous. And they really get quite candid with us in telling us what is going on, what's really going on, something that they may not bring up to their manager or their, the person that they report to, because they hold your paycheck in their hands. And the chances of you getting fired or, laid off, let's say, for raising this issue is a very real situation. And so they're not inclined to mention it as an issue, and they just kind of deal with it day to day. And that's why it takes them extra 15 minutes or whatever it might be. And so when folks like me come in and my team, they oftentimes will get very candid with us and tell us what's going on. And that also helps in our problem identification and then, of course, resolution.
Yeah, people are always more comfortable kind of, and we always try to get our discovery sessions wind up being multiple days, and we try to get the bosses out of the room for the first couple ones.
Yeah.
Because it takes people a little time to get comfortable with who we are, so we're not the Bobs from Office Space kind of coming in and you're talking about your work, but you've got to get a handle on who we are, and you just get more comfortable when your bosses aren't in the room, so they do want to open up to you. And listen, most agents, I will say most, and I think, Kevin, you said something on another podcast about this, but they want to advance their careers just like anybody else does. They're looking for the next best thing. They're looking to succeed well, and they don't want to leave if they don't have to. So they're looking to be enabled as much as possible, and it's a big thing. So they'll be open with you for the betterment of the company. And I think that a mistake managers will make is they won't let those people kind of voice their opinion too frequently.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like, I think, and I tell my own team this, like, staying quiet or staying silent and not bringing something up or not talking about something as a group or as a team, it's not helping anyone. And so, I think also that is another thing yet that we look at is even on the managerial level, how much autonomy are you giving your team? Are they able to speak up and talk about things that are maybe not working for them, or like frankly just not working for the customer, or when they're, you know, being set up for their day-to-day, you know, assignments, are they really set up with the right you know, technology, the right you know, are they really set up for success? And so I think it is really, really important to you know, create the kind of environment where they feel that they can actually, you know, talk about those things and be really successful.
I agree. So we've had you now in the middle of your day for about 35, 40 minutes or so. You know, I guess probably two questions that I probably think of. One, you know, can you give us a story where, you know, you came into an organization and because of what you did, you turned something around that people can really go and, you know what, when I think of that, I got to think of Amanda Russo.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think a lot of the times clients will engage us with the envision that it's going to get just a little bit better. And so a really great example, one of my favorite stories to tell, I tell her to date that this is one of my favorite stories to tell. I probably told you, Frank, this same story 100 times, if not more. But we did have a client. She is an e-commerce business. And, you know, she initially engaged us to fix her customer service, is what she called it. And so we went in, you know, the pandemic started, it was unfolding quite literally as we were just beginning our engagement. And I said, okay, you know what? Actually, we don't really know how this is going to turn out. So let's address these issues now, right? While we start, you know, kind of figuring out what's going on with this pandemic. We get in there, we go through our whole discovery process, and we uncover a handful of issues, really nothing too serious, but enough where, you know, frankly, if we automated it, she could grow and scale and process a lot more, you know, orders, a lot more returns, a lot more, right? And not have such a heavy reliance on manpower and hiring more people and so on and so forth, right? So we go through this exercise and we decide we're going to automate. Now remember, back to the Kevin reference of Ferrari, she wanted the Ferrari version of this particular software. She wanted this solution to be the same solution that some of the Fortune 500s are using. You know, some of the really big retailers are using for their solution. And, you know, it is a part of my job to talk her out of that, or to talk the client out of that for good reason. Frankly, it's just too expensive. All the bells and whistles you don't really need right now. And, you know, and let's just resolve the issue at hand. So long story short, so we did, you know, finally I talked her into getting, you know, the more reasonable solution. It was more cost effective. And frankly, it just answered the questions that she had or the issues that she was having. And, I mean, less than 4 weeks later, she scaled over 12-fold. And we got back on the phone, recalibrated her levels of inventory, you know, fixed some of the other issues that we could fix, right? Because it's never going to be a perfect, you know, one and done kind of solution. You're always going to have to keep revisiting these processes. And less than a year later, we built her own fulfillment center. Because frankly, outsourcing a lot of those solutions then became even more cumbersome and less effective. So we reduced her costs then at that point in this juncture by 84%. So now she has total control over her whole business. We reduced her costs by 84%, which afforded her to hire some full-time employees, run their own warehouse, scale this business, potentially start other businesses, and, you know, maybe even venture into other areas, you know, of business that she may not have had the ability to do before.
So, so 12x growth, 84%. I've heard the story. I never heard the numbers before, but 12x growth and 84% reduction in cost is significant. And that's symptomatic of the fact that when you're on the inside, you just don't see the issues. Well, let me ask you a question. Was it symptomatic of because the person was in the inside, just couldn't see the issues, or because they were new, they were growing quickly, they were new to this world?
Yeah, it's not that they didn't see the issues. Everybody was really kind of well aware of the issues. I think that a lot of the times the problem is that they don't see the solution because they don't know about the solution, right? You might have a good idea, but a lot of the times they don't know how to go about finding the solution, how to implement that solution. You might have a really good idea. We've done this before, or we purchased this or whatever, but now we're implementing a solution. And then how do you tie all of those kind of loose ends together? And so that's what we do. We do cover the end-to-end operational life cycle, the supply chain, all of it, everything in between, because we want to set the client up for success. And we did. So they did feel a lot of the symptoms. They knew what they knew a part of what some of the issues were. And when we come in and just make those really, really clear.
That's awesome. Kevin, you have anything you want to close out on, or?
I guess, if you're talking to all the stakeholders and organizations who are watching this, what's the main point to get across to their ownership team when they're obviously hit with that pushback of change means expense and I don't want to talk about it, yet that inability to pivot and change is going to affect that stakeholder's career, which we see a lot. We see people who realize this is not just good for the organization, but it's also good for them, and they want to move into the next level of whatever that business is. But the top ownership is like, talk to me about it next year. What's the biggest way to overcome that?
So I would say this is what I say, frankly, to folks that are really worried about budget or worried about the change or, kind of worried about the disruption in the company, all of the other factors that will make, someone procrastinate or put it off until next year or whatever. To always kind of remember, and we have another ebook coming out about this, to remember
Prolific.
Making no decision is also a decision, and it will cost you. And so if you decide, let's say you don't have the budget, you don't want to take on this type of disruption, even though we do these change initiatives with minimal disruption, it's of course, there's always going to be a little bit of disruption, but we ensure that there's a minimal amount of disruption. So what I do say is, frankly, making no decision is a decision. It will cost you a lot more money to procrastinate than you think you're saving by procrastinating. And also, if you think that the problem isn't going to exacerbate over time, I think that you'll be, unfortunately mistaken. And oftentimes it gets worse as time goes on, and you're losing customer experience, customers in general. You might be losing team members, that are frankly just getting frustrated with the current situation. So, not making a decision is a decision, and it is often one of the more expensive decisions you will not make, right?
Yeah,
well said.
I agree with that. Well said. I agree. So I think that's probably a good place to end, because anything I say now is just going to waste time, Ron, because that was a perfect closer. I thought that was really great. So, Kevin, I think we'll sign off. We'll go from there.
Yep.
Thank you very much for, joining us. Amanda, I really appreciate finally getting you on the show. Good luck with the business, especially as we come out of this pandemic here. This is exciting times for everybody. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thanks
Another
so much.
episode of the CX Experience done.